everyone. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Uri, because he's kind of getting very active to getting all the GraphQL meetups in Europe back, and I'm just tagging along with him. And so just big applause to Uri, please. So yes, my talk will just be like 10 minutes, so very soon we'll be able to go back to drinks and food. I made after the Q&A, I made the title a little bit less kind of, controversial, so it's moved to kind of scaling UI development with Relay GraphQL. But yeah, it actually, I'm basically saying the same thing. Quick introduction, I'm working for Hasura. Who has heard of Hasura before? That will help me kind of adjust the talk a little bit. Okay, so just very quickly, so Hasura is a tool to auto-generate production-grade APIs on all of your data. Originally we started with Postgres, now we are supporting any kind of database including MongoDB and others. And what I'm most excited about, which is something that is happening in my team, is we're adding the capability of building APIs using AI. So the first step towards this will be supporting vector DBs, and then we'll be moving to supporting a lot of AI agents. This will be probably my next talk when I come back to Amsterdam, hopefully. Then very quickly about me, I'm from Switzerland, and in my free time I like dirt biking for adrenaline and ballet for expression of arts. So if you want to talk about dirt bikes, like catch me after my talk. Cool, very quickly about the agenda. First I want to talk about our challenge that we face at Hasura, which kind of made us want to use Relay. Then kind of the two options that we saw that didn't work for us, and then the solution that we found. And in the end, kind of now how we're working towards this solution. So if you have heard about Hasura, you know that we support different way of building APIs. We have an API to build the API, we have an CLI, and we have the Hasura console. Now the Hasura console is built on React. So now that the product is getting bigger and we want to ship more features, we want to scale the UI team. Now we added more people to the team, but it didn't scale because we had a lot of problems to parallelize the development because of UI ownership. We were not able to kind of say, okay, this team owns this specific component and so on. So we saw two options. One of them was to have independent micro apps. Now this will not work. I mean, we looked at it, it won't work because each section of the UI would take too long to load, because from every microservice we would need to load assets. And in the worst case, it would not load at the same time, and then it looks terrible. It's a terrible user experience. Even worse, if you would switch to another tab, there would be a reload, which is like, this is the no-go these days. Yes, so if you make each component make your own API, then there's also a lot of redundant data fetching, which affects performance for the worst. So data is also not synchronized across components, and this can lead to inconsistent states. So we might actually show wrong data in one of the components, and even worse, different data at the same time. And also, the worst of all, everything would go through the root component, which then it makes it impossible for the components to be owned by separate teams. So this option one didn't work for us. Then we looked at another option, like let's keep the UI components that we currently have and just assign owners to each component. Now this is very hard because there's always shared state still between these components. And the global state store gets used and modified by all of these components, and then these can call regression. So if we change something in the root component, then we are not aware of other component that is owned by another team, then we might break it without realizing it. Yeah, and the data fetching responsibility is always at the root node, which cannot be owned by a single team because everybody is working on it. So this also didn't work for us. So then we were looking at a relay style GraphQL. So in this case, each component should have an owner, and this owner should be able to work on their component and define the data that belongs to this component independently of everybody else, of every other team, of every other component. The relay compiler, which is demonstrated here, looks at the component tree. This is how relay works, and merges everything into a single query. This makes sure that the state gets updated reliably in all the other components, because everything is managed by this single query. Also, there's no redundant data fetching because everything goes back to this compiler. Relay maps, this is the big advantage that we get from relay maps, GraphQL fragments to React components. And as far as we're aware of, there's no other API fetching technology that solves this problem so far. If you know of any, please let me know, because we're still kind of in the beginning phase of building this out. Okay, so now we have some challenges because Hasura is now pretty advanced. We have a lot of different data sources, so we don't only have the GraphQL API, we also have actions for business logic, we have remote schemas and event triggers and so on. So the current version of Hasura doesn't cover all of these features yet on the relay. We're working on V3 that will come out in a few weeks, and then we will support all of them. But this is one of the challenges because it needs to extend the spec of Relay to support all of these data sources. Yeah, and another thing is that connection paginations and some of the other functionalities that Relay offers are a little bit complex, so it takes some time to add support for all of this. Now, how are we approaching this? So again, this is very early state of the project, and I would love to get feedback on if you think this makes sense, if you already have a solution for this problem. But what we are planning to do is, we anyway do a lot of dogfooding in Hasura. I mean, Hasura Cloud is built on Hasura, so we use our own product basically to build the product. What we're doing now is to do the same to build APIs. So a Hasura Relay API for the console is something that we're working on, but with a simplified spec. So it won't be just Relay, it will be Hasura Relay, because the Relay spec is quite complex to implement, and we want to make it very easy for developers so that you can very easily have component ownership separated in your team, and therefore scale your UI team as well. Some server support is already present, and of course for tables at the server level of Hasura. But for example, Hasura doesn't provide global ID to all of the data sources. One of the examples is that, for example, views don't have primary keys. So at the moment, we don't have support for Relay for this reason. But with the V3 version that will come out in a few weeks, we will have full Relay spec compatibility, plus more for all the other things that we offer at Hasura. Yes, and our vision is to make any API and any data source into a Relay compatible API for this reason, so that we can scale UI teams. Now the question that we're asking ourselves is, first of all, do other people have the same problem? Like, how do you work on who is a front-end developer? Has anybody solved the solution of a component ownership without extensive collaboration within teams? I mean, if yes, please approach me afterwards, because I would love to know how you do it. Because this is more or less, okay. Yeah, let's definitely talk afterwards, because yeah, for us this is currently the way that we want to solve it, but we are also thinking, because this project is very early stage, we're thinking maybe we've missed something, like maybe there's another technology that we don't know of that already solves this. And otherwise, I would also be interested, like, I don't think a lot of, who is using Relay? A little bit. Yeah, not so many people. So Relay, kind of, for what we want to use it, it seems very powerful, but we also know not many teams are using it. So would love to know why. I'm assuming it's because of the difficulty of the spec to implement it with the GraphQL API. But please give me any thoughts that you have. And also, of course, if you think it's useful, because this will be something that we will open source to the whole community, that you can make your API also Relay compatible. Yes, with this, I will soon hand over to Yuri. I have stickers and pins for Hasura if you want. I'm around. I would love to hear about your solutions to UI components ownership. And thank you so much for listening.